Welcome back to another episode of the Boss Juice podcast. Today we have Jeremy Goldman of Top of the Triangle. Mm-hmm. Jeremy, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, you came into entrepreneurship sort of late in life.
Yeah.
This is pretty much, from what I can tell, your first venture in entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. What gave you the courage to jump into entrepreneurship this late?
The courage, I think, comes from being... So before I did this, I was in sales and outdoor, specifically a sales rep in the outdoor industry. And to be successful at that, you have to be able to ask, is this okay for you? Is this good for you? Will you buy this? You have to, whatever the question is, you have to be comfortable with that. And then when I left the professional realm to become a stay-at-home dad, I had this idea of doing the zip line. When you have a newborn, there's a lot of diapers, but there's also a lot of downtime. They sleep a lot. So that gave me the time to sort of work on it and develop it. And it's been very fun to be sort of your own boss. And my dad also, I want to say, he was an accountant, but he worked for Touche Ross at the time, which is now Deloitte, and Touche was now Deloitte. And he left to become his own, to start his own firm. It was just him. And I always thought that was really cool to like leave a big giant firm and then throw caution to the wind and just sort of start, your own thing. Mm-hmm. I always thought that was really cool.
It is cool. Mm-hmm. So tell us about what you're trying to achieve here in the city.
Okay. So can I do that by explaining what the zip line was and sort of transition to get to where we are now?
Give us the whole story.
So
here.
About 8-9 years ago, my wife and I went on a cruise, and one of the stops was at Labadee, Haiti, and they have a zip line that goes from the top of a mountain over an ocean bay to sort of like a peninsula on the other side of the bay. You go from the top of the mountain over the water and land on land on the other side. And so my wife and I do this. It was incredible. And we're sitting on the beach watching the other people do the zip line and having our, Mai Tais and other fun drinks. And I said, this is just like Pittsburgh. We should do this in Pittsburgh. Literally palm trees, ocean, beach. And my wife's like, what are you talking about? A couple other 4-letter words there. But and I'm like, look, there's land, there's water, there's land. This is just like Pittsburgh. We should do a zip line in Pittsburgh. Again, a couple 4-letter words. You're an idiot. And then, like I said, we had our daughter. And I never sort of let go of that idea. I just thought it was like perfect. Like, why don't we have this? The topography of Pittsburgh is perfect for it. So I literally just started to scout where could we launch from, where could we land. I also want to tell you that I grew up being a camper and a staff person and then an administrative staff person at an overnight summer camp. And one of my responsibilities was to oversee the outdoor adventure program. And to do that, I got trained to become a ropes course technician, and director, supervisor, plus design different things. So the new zip line that's there now, plus a couple other camps, have the things that I built there. So it's not like I'm just winging it, sort of know what I'm doing. And then, so literally driving up and down Mount Washington, looking at different spots, looking on Google Earth, where could we do this? Is it feasible? Could we pull a van over? Like all those things. And then where are we going to land? So we had a ton of very positive, very, very, the ball was rolling, right? Like everything you can think of with the zip line was a full go. The FAA gave us their blessing. The Army Corps of Engineers, the city of Pittsburgh, everybody, except the railroad companies on the bottom of the mountain. And their tracks go the entire length of the river. There is not one spot where you can't our cables would not go over their tracks. Even though our cables would be 250 feet above their tracks, they still said no. And that took about 5 years of constantly pushing, getting meetings, having phone calls, writing letters, going to Harrisburg, sitting down with the mayor, both mayors, Peduto and Gainey, tons of political influence that we tried to get. And then finally, about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I had a sort of the final phone call with CSX where they told me no. And that I'm very much trying to be politically correct with that phone call because it was bad. It was not bad because they said no, but bad in how they said it and the what they said and just the arrogance and the condescending nature of the phone call, and it was just really, really bad. But then that night, literally the same night, my wife, who owns a tax and accounting firm, took her staff and their spouses to the baseball game, to the Pirate game. So we are sitting behind home plate, but on the upper deck, and I'm like still focused on that bad phone call, but sitting there trying to be as hospitable as possible, but I'm just like, my brain is just like not present with these people that are there. And when you sit there and you look out, all you can see is the skyline of Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, we should just do a zip line from the U.S. Steel building to PPG. And I'm like, well, why don't we do that, right? So I go home and figure out that there's like 20 different property owners in between the two buildings. And I'm like, forget that. I can't even deal with 2 property owners, let alone 20. And so no. But right next door to the U.S. Steel building is the BNY Mellon building. And there are no property owners in between. It literally is the Steel building, Steel Plaza, 6th Avenue, Mellon Square Park, and then the Mellon building. And connected underneath them, underground, is the T station with the tunnels that go to both buildings. The relative heights between the two buildings is perfect for a zip line, plus the distance between the two is perfect. So I started researching who owns the buildings and how to get in touch with them, and talking to different commercial real estate brokers. Do you know them? And just started, going down that path, and finally got in touch with the owners of the Steel building, and they're very cautious but excited at that time to have us sort of go ahead and meet with the manager of the building and show him our ideas. By this time, it was evident that nobody from the Mellon building was calling us back. Like it just wasn't happening. We now know that they're walking away from the building and they don't want to do anything with the building. But at the time, we had no idea. So my first meeting with the building was very zipline heavy, still trying to get that done. Plus, let's look at all the other things we could do on the building. Since then, we have transitioned twice. Once to sort of putting the zip line on the back burner, and then let's go do all these things that we can just do on the Steel building, which I'll explain in a second. And then the second transition was when the Steelers announced that the NFL draft is coming to Pittsburgh, to really put a fire under us to get the project up and running. Sure. And sort of take away the extra activities and focus purely on getting people to go to an observation deck on the roof of the building. Because all the other stuff would take a long time to build and get permits for and everything. It's still taking a long time to build and get permits for just an observation deck. But once we have that up and running in the years that follow the draft, we'll be able to add those other activities. So now the focus of the top of the triangle is to take advantage of the Steel building's roof, which is the largest, highest rooftop space in the world. So there is no larger roof that is higher than the U.S. Steel building anywhere you go. When that building was designed in
And roof meaning, sorry to interrupt, but roof meaning somewhere where people can stand on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So any building that's taller than the steel building comes to a point, or somehow narrows at the top, or just isn't as big as the steel building.
Gotcha.
Each floor is just over an acre in size. So if I'm on one corner of the roof and you are on the far side of the roof, there is no way we're talking to each other. I can't even yell that far, and I'm pretty loud. So it's massive, massive, massive. And the reason why it's so big is when they designed the building, they wanted the U.S. Steel executives to be able to land their helicopters on the roof. So when you go to the roof and you see this enormous space, it could fit 3 helicopters on the roof at the same time.
Wow. So
it is almost impossible to describe it, but once you're up there, it is awe-inspiring how big this thing is. And just like at an airport that has a control tower that sticks up really high up above the ground and they control the planes that are landing, there is a similar tower at the steel building, except for safety reasons, they countersunk the tower into the building. So right now it sticks up from the roof of the building about 5 feet. And that control tower is a hexagon in shape. And so our goal is to convert the roof of the hexagon, the roof of the control tower, to an ADA accessible observation deck. And then there will be stairs that come from the roof of the roof of the control tower down to the main level of the roof, plus an elevator that will take those people that can't walk the steps down to the main level of the roof. So it'll be a 2-level observation deck experience. The reason why it's important for me, and I think for everybody, to get on the roof of the control tower is the main level of the roof is so big you cannot see over the far edge. And we are only going to keep the public sort of on 1/3 of the triangle. And that third is the part of the triangle that faces PNC Park and that you can see from Acrisure and the point. But there's really good viewing to look on the other side, and you can't see it when you're on the main level. Okay. The roof is just too big. But when you go up on the roof of the control tower, you're high enough that you can see over the edge, and you'll be able to see Duquesne University and Oakland. You can see the cathedral, plus all the way out. The other thing that's really cool is when you're up there, you really get a sense of, first of all, how hilly Pittsburgh is, but really how flat Pittsburgh is. When you look out, it is perfectly flat. We are like it is as if a glacier came a long time ago and just sort of carved it all flat. And then there's these valleys that we think are big hills. But once you're on top, it is perfectly flat as far as you can see. And on a clear day, you can see all the way out to Seven Springs. You can see West Virginia. You can see Ohio. It's incredible when you're standing up there.
So you mentioned about a lot of different hurdles you had to kind of overcome to get this off the ground. And, you said a 5-year period of kind of going back and forth. Besides the negative kind of feedback from people pushing back with different regulations and whatnot, how has the city been in terms of positive feedback? Because I feel like as a Pittsburgh native, I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, it's been nothing but positive. We really haven't had any negative for either project, the zip line or top of the triangle. A quick story just to sort of prove that point. When I called the FAA about the zip line, the person at the FAA that's in charge of Pittsburgh's airspace, sort of mapping and permitting and all that stuff, is she lives in Houston, but she grew up in Pittsburgh. And every time I meet somebody or have to talk to somebody, there's inevitably, if that's the right word, a Pittsburgh connection. Sure. And it's been so cool to have that kind of stuff. And there's been times where I have a meeting with a politician, and they have no idea what I'm coming in for, right? It's just, there's this guy who wants to talk to you about a building downtown, and the politician will walk in sort of like, what does this guy want? And you can tell by his body language and sort of their attitude. And I'm like, I want to build an observation deck in the middle of downtown. And they're like, oh, this is great. And they're like, they instantly change. And how can I help? What can I do? And it's a very exciting project to be working on. And everybody's given us great feedback.
Sure. And so in terms of pushback from some of you mentioned the railroad companies and the different people who own the buildings, how's an entrepreneur kind of get in the room there? I feel like that is not an easy, Pittsburgh's small, but I don't think it's easy to get in the room to have those conversations with people.
I literally just ask. I find whoever it is, do a lot of research before I make a phone call, make sure I'm calling the right person. Or if I don't know who the right person is, I literally say that. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call and say, if it's all politicians want to meet with you, right? If you have an issue, they want to talk to you. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are or not. And if you agree with that politician or not, they want to work with you. They want to make the public, their constituents, happy, right? So I haven't had anything like that, any pushback at all. The challenges are like with permitting, for example, to be able to be flexible enough to say, okay, well, permitting is saying we have to do this, right? For example, right now there's only one means of exit from the roof level that doesn't involve an escalator or an elevator, and that's one set of steps that goes from the roof all the way down to the ground level. And permitting said, we had a pre-permitting meeting with the city. Our local councilman Bobby Wilson helped to arrange it, and yet another example of like literally them working hard behind the scenes to help get this off the ground. They were like, you have to add more steps to get people from the roof down, or you can only have like 10 people on the roof. Plus, it's not ADA accessible, so you got to do something. So to be able to be flexible enough and have an architect that can say, together come up with ideas of how can we make this work. We know that this is a issue for them, and for it to go forward, we have to fix this. So how do we do that? And
right.
You cannot be stuck in your ways, right? You have to be able to listen to the feedback, whatever it is,
right,
and sort of adjust and bob and weave your way to get where you need to go.
And that's truly entrepreneurship, is kind of finding your way to get to where you want to go by all means necessary.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing about those kind of pushbacks and that you've gotten from people. A common thread on this show from guests is that when they were first starting a business, that acquiring funding for their kind of venture was tough. And I imagine that this venture obviously requires funding to get it off the ground.
Yep.
How has your experience been in Pittsburgh with finding funding for this?
Yeah, so we are going about that several ways. The first is, in true new entrepreneurship fashion, I have no idea how to raise money. Okay, so I'll be the first to admit it. So I lean on other people to help me. How do you do this, right? Friends that are in the business world, people that I grew up with, people I've met later in life, all sort of acting as de facto advisors. Excuse me. And one of the things that a common theme with what everybody had advised me is you have to have multiple streams, right? You can't rely on just one thing that's going to get you the money to do this. And so in that nature, I had heard of Honeycomb from some friends that did campaigns with them. Honeycomb is a Pittsburgh company. They are a crowdsource funding company like a Kickstarter, but Kickstarter, your reward for an investment in one of their campaigns is a prize. You get a sticker, a t-shirt, discount on product, something like that. With Honeycomb, it's very similar, except your reward is financial. It is a true financial investment. And because this is such a public notable, has, huge notoriety, the top of the triangle. I thought it was a great match for us to do an initial campaign with Honeycomb to get the public excited about the project, and also have those people that want to invest be able to buy in. And I mean that figuratively, right? So yes, literally they can buy in and become an investor, but also buy into the project and have them be able to come to the roof and say, I invested in this. I helped this top of the triangle get off the ground. So that has been great. If you go to our campaign page on the Honeycomb website, you can go to the discussion tab, and there's tons of people that have said, my mom used to work at the Top of the Triangle restaurant, back in the 80s or 90s. And, or like, I got engaged at the restaurant, or, I remember doing this or whatever. And it's so great to hear those stories and have those people, remember what the Top of the Triangle used to be. And then also the people saying, what are you talking about? I've never heard of this restaurant before. Like, what is that? And then that starts the discussion for them. So that's been great. And then the second part of it is, so with the Honeycomb campaign, it's literally, we designed it to be what we're calling the pre-construction money. So like architecture fees, lawyer fees, consulting fees, permitting fees, just to have that sort of, I don't want to call it a nest egg, but that money that will be able to come in and just do that. Then as that's happening, we're raising millions of dollars to do the build out of the entire project.
More from like investors in private equity? More
exactly.
Traditional way.
Yeah. So meeting with local families that are, I don't want to mention names.
Sure.
I like to keep it private, but that have a lot of money, that believe in Pittsburgh, believe in downtown, believe that in the project, that this will literally be, if you build it, they will come type of thing. We all know that downtown Pittsburgh isn't doing as great as it could be. And by us building this and having hundreds of thousands of people a year come downtown to experience that, which is not the same as those people going to a baseball game or going to a Penguins game. These are people that are staying in a different part of town. They'll be spending their money on a different part of downtown. They're not going to the theater. They may, right? It may be a crossover. But literally there'll be an influx of people coming downtown and spending where are we going to go for lunch after we do this, or what are we going to do for a dinner or whatever. We're down here. Let's walk around.
Yeah. Let's tap into that a little bit more, because I think that's a very important point to make about Pittsburgh as a whole, and kind of the commerce around the city. Obviously, as you know, post-COVID or during COVID, kind of there was an influx of people outside of the city. And I'm a Pittsburgh native. What I've seen Pittsburgh be right now, downtown, is not what I remember it being, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago.
Right.
Does that concern you at all in this venture that you're going to have?
I think you could argue it either way, right? So somebody could be an expert and say, don't even bother doing this because of how bad Pittsburgh is. I'm the opposite. I'm an optimist. And I truly believe that this is something that anybody in downtown, the greater Pittsburgh region, the greater Pittsburgh region, will come to Pittsburgh to come do this. It is an easy thing for people to do, meaning you walk in the building, you take an elevator, you buy your tickets and do your stuff, you take another elevator, you then check out one of the engineering levels of the building, get on another elevator that we're building. We're calling it a shuttle elevator that will take people to the roof. Take your pictures, hang out, and then come back down, buy souvenirs if you want to, and then leave. You're not asking somebody to walk miles or do any sort of physical exertion or anything like that. It is a very family friendly, from great grandma all the way down to a toddler will be able to enjoy, seeing Pittsburgh from the roof of the building. So, being not even an optimist. It's just we don't have anything like this in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no,
right?
we
Like,
don't.
Mount Washington is cool. Don't get me wrong, and so is the incline. But it is completely different when you are standing on the roof of the building and you are looking out. It is a true mix of like an urban environment and a nature environment at the same time. And every day is different. I've been on the roof trying, getting this project up and running dozens of times, and every single day it's different. It's windy, it's cloudy, it's no clouds at all. It sometimes at night. And so when people, no matter when you come to the building and when you come the second time and third time, hopefully, it's always a different experience. And that has been very cool to see, especially for me, who's up there a lot. I'm very used to it. When I bring new people up there, they're like kids in a candy store, running over to not running, but going over to the edge of the building and looking and seeing what you can see. And, I grew up over here and that's where that is. Oh, look how small that is. And I can't believe how far you can see. And, it's really fun.
So is your kind of niche audience more of tourists, or is this are you viewing this more as a tourist attraction, or is this more truly for the Pittsburgh natives?
That's a very good question. I think it's literally both. Okay. However, in our performa, which is a word I learned as being an entrepreneur, I'll give you a story. So doing the research for what a rooftop activity could be, I found this company out of Paris called Magnicity, like magnify a city. And they own and operate rooftop experiences all over the world: Chicago, Paris, Berlin, a whole bunch of others. And I reached out to them. They immediately emailed me back and got me in touch with their American contact, this guy Keith out of Chicago. Keith called me. It was either that day or the next day, and then came to Pittsburgh for a site visit.
Wow.
The following Tuesday. He was blown away by the accessibility of the building, not ADA accessible, but like just the fact that the history of the building allows for people to get to the roof, right? That doesn't happen in a lot of buildings. Plus the views that you have being up there, the possibilities that you have, the willingness of the ownership of the building and the management of the building to work with us to build this attraction. But I tell you all of that to tell you that we partnered with Magnicity for them to do a market study on Pittsburgh to see, is this feasible, right? Do we have a large enough population of Pittsburghers, and I'm including sort of the greater Pittsburgh, not people who live in downtown, but the greater, and not just the city, like the greater Pittsburgh area. Do we have enough people to keep this sustainable? And then do we have enough tourists to come in to further that along? So then Magnicity, along with Keith, built this business plan and sort of analysis. And when they came back to us with their numbers, what they got, the number of people that they predicted coming to do the top of the triangle, they only focused on those people that spend a night staying in a hotel in Pittsburgh. So not just downtown, but like by the airport or whatever. So, and out of that, less than 5% of those overnight guests they think are going to come to top of the triangle. That less than 5% of just the overnight guests make this a very successful business venture.
Wow.
You and I and everybody watching know that it's not just overnight guests that are coming, right? Everybody, and not everybody, but your neighbors, whatever, Joe Schmo from Turtle Creek is going to come.
Sure.
He's not spending a hotel, spending money on a hotel. But they're those people that are just doing a day or an afternoon or whatever to come down and do it and leave, those were not considered at all in their plan. So, but we use those very conservative numbers because they're backed by an expert in this very niche field that we can go to investors and say, it's sort of a proven business plan. As much as you can predict the future, here you go.
Here you go. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. If you don't mind me asking, how much have you guys been able to raise so far, and what is your total goal that you're trying to raise?
So with Honeycomb, as we sit right now, we're almost at 70,000 of our campaign. We have about from today, I think it's 15 days left to go in the campaign. Our campaign minimum is 100,000. So if we don't hit the 100,000, all the investors get all their money back. Once we hit the 100,000, then there's a reimbursement calculator that kicks in to the investors, and then it's capped at 500,000. With the big money, and I don't mean that despairingly against Honeycomb. Just we're talking millions of dollars. We need to raise definitely more than 5 and probably less than $10 million to do what we're calling phase 1, which is the build out of our lower lobby welcome area in the building, the build out of our 47th floor, and the build out of the roof level, and which includes a railing system. There's already a railing there, but we have to add to it, sort of like glass walls that go around. And then that shuttle elevator that I spoke to you about, making sure that everything is ADA compliant, making sure that we're following all the permitting requirements. For example, we have to add a sprinkler system to every floor that we're on. Most of the floors, if not all the floors, have it except for one. So we have to add a sprinkler system and make sure it's all up to fire code and all that stuff. So that's where the big money comes in.
So that company in Paris,
Magnicity,
mm-hmm. Obviously they see Pittsburgh as a good place to kind of start this. What are your future plans for this? Do you have future plans to expand to other cities? Is it just Pittsburgh based?
So focusing on top of the triangle right now, again, like I mentioned, we're getting the observation deck up and running before the NFL draft. The draft is coming in the end of April. So our goal is to do those 4 build outs, the lower lobby, 47th floor, the roof, and the shuttle elevator, done by February of 26. And that way we're open February, March, a little bit of April of 26 before the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people descend on Pittsburgh. I don't know where they're sleeping, by the way, but we'll figure that out. It's not for me to worry about. So that's phase 1, okay? And being up and running by that February, March-ish date, everybody I talk to about fundraising, about construction, about permitting, about architecture, everything is with that focus of the NFL draft. We know we would be successful if there was no draft coming to Pittsburgh, but because of how big that is going to be, it is very important for us to be up and running for that. Right. Phase 2, which are those add-on activities that I mentioned, but I'll tell you what they are now. If you can picture the building, the corners of the building are inverted. So if you look at the logo on my hat, you can see that each corner doesn't come to a point. The point is sort of tucked in towards the building. So the corner of the building that faces PNC Park, the one that's at the bottom of the logo, or out front of the logo, we are going to be on the rooftop level filling in that space with a glass floor. So people will buy their ticket to go to the roof of the building and then buy an extra ticket to be able to go stand on a glass floor 841 feet above the ground. By the way, everything that I'm about to tell you has already been invented. We're not inventing the wheel out of scratch, right? This is all technology and things that are in other cities. We're just picking sort of what I think is the best rooftop attractions and bringing them to Pittsburgh. So you can go to New York, you can go to Dubai, you can go to the Grand Canyon and stand on a glass floor, right? Ours is a little bit different because you're literally stepping outside of the building, like you're on the roof outside, but you're literally stepping over the railing and you're going to be out hovering over Grant Street. And you'll be looking right at PNC Park, and everybody at PNC Park will be looking at you, even though you're far away. But it's going to be pretty cool. I got ahead of myself. So that's sort of like what I'm considering the medium thrill level. Even though you're just standing on a glass floor, a lot of people, when I tell them about that, they get very sort of into themselves, and they like walk, they literally take steps away from me as I'm talking because they get very like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like they're, so that's, it's very interesting. Even though you're just standing on, whatever. The lowest thrill level activity that we're adding is going to be down on our 47th floor, in the same corner that the rooftop glass floor will be on. Will be what's called the tilt, and the tilt is technology. It's a ride, attraction, whatever you call it. That's already in Chicago. They call it Chicago 360, and it's a set of windows that 8 or 10 people can stand in. One person per window, and the entire sort of bank of windows tilts out over the ground below. Theirs is, I think, 900 feet above the ground. I mean, it's ridiculous how tall it is. Ours will be on the 47th floor, but what's cool about it is you will be in amongst all the buildings around you, and it's a straight line of sight to PNC Park. As the windows tilt out, the roof or the ceiling of the window, sort of like in this box, is glass. So as you tilt out and you're looking down onto Grand Street, you can also look up and see out over to the people above you. And we're going to be building 2 of them. So a set of 3 on one side, 3 or 4 on one side, and 3 or 4 on the other side. And as they tilt out, not only will you be able to look out and down, but you'll be able to look at each other. So you and your partner can split up and look at each other, being how scared they are, or you can be next to each other, whatever you want. And the reason why this is a low thrill level activity is you're not buckled in. At any time, you can step off. And as you see videos of people doing it in Chicago, you can see the people that are like it's tilting, but they're keeping their body back where it's flat. And you see people that are scared, and they're like, nope, stepping off. And
but then you can't step into the glass, correct? Like
you'll be on a platform with a glass pane of glass in front of you, and then big giant handles on the sides, and then the whole thing tilts forward.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And so again, low thrill level there. A lot of people are like, nope, not doing that either. But a lot of people will do that. And then the high thrill level, the highest, the big one, we're calling the beam, in the corner of the building that faces Mount Washington. We are spanning sort of the like tip to tip of the inverted triangle, sort of completing the triangle with a steel I-beam. And people will be able to walk on the outside of the building, down to the beam, across the beam, and come back to the building. They'll have an overhead belay system. You'll have a full body harness on. It'll be unbelievably safe. However, an I-beam is only this big, right? So you're going to be walking, for 50 feet, 841 feet above the ground.
I don't know if I can do that attraction.
Yeah, it is very intense. The other thing that I love about that is we are going to literally pay homage to our steel industry, our steel workers specifically.
That's awesome.
So when people get dressed in their safety gear, it will look like you are a steel worker, right? Not just putting on a jumpsuit like you may see in if you look it up in other cities, but our jumpsuit, we're designing to look like you're a steel worker. Our safety helmet will be a steel worker's safety helmet. You can't bring a camera with you or anything like that, so we'll have cameras suspended in all the different places. The camera knows who you are when you walk across the beam. So once it's done taking your pictures, they're automatically in your email. Like as soon as it takes your picture, it's in your email. And then that famous picture of the guys sitting on the I-beam eating lunch. That's in New York, but there's similar pictures to people doing that in Pittsburgh, and we will superimpose you in those pictures. So a black and white picture as if you are a steel worker, and there'll be U.S. Steel stuff everywhere. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Those are very cool attractions. I don't know if I'll do the beam attraction, but
you're going to be our test guy. So moving forward, those are going to happen not all at the same time, but Kenny would build something new every year. You always want to go back in a similar fashion. We're going to be doing that year after year after year.
So this is kind of an off-topic question, but you mentioned your plans to get this live for the NFL draft with this influx of people coming to town. I always joke and say that Pittsburgh was designed to like house and transport like 500 people. Yep. Is the city prepared or like to have that? I don't think there's gonna be a ton of people coming in for that draft.
A ton of people. So I've been speaking with Visit Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership and people from the Steelers and the people that are putting on the draft, not just who they're picking, but like the production of it. And if you look up pictures of what happened in Detroit this past draft, they claim that they had 750,000 people come to the draft. Now, a lot of people are saying that was over the weekend or that was, I don't care how you slice it up. That's a lot of freaking people.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Just on an aside, a lot of people are like, why? Why are so many people coming here? And first of all, it's free, right? It is a Super Bowl level event that is absolutely free for you to go and have a great time at. Plus, every team is there. When you go to the Super Bowl, it's unbelievably expensive, and only 2 teams go, right? So now every city, every team is represented, so everybody comes. So with the draft, working with the city and Visit Pittsburgh and everybody, they are assuming that the Airbnbs are going to go through the roof and all the other stuff that goes with that. People are going to be staying as far down as Morgantown and north and however far away, busing into the city and busing back out. I think that they should bring in some riverboats and have people stay on the riverboats. I know that the local colleges are looking into altering their class schedule, so that way the kids will be out of the dorm and people will be able to rent dorm space as hotel rooms.
Who's getting that money? The students or the?
Well, probably not the students, right? But it is an unbelievable opportunity for the city. Everything from local restaurants to anything that you can think of is just going to be, it's going to be huge.
Yep.
Huge. So they are working very hard on looking at every little detail on how to make it as smooth and as good as possible.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because that was like, as a someone who lives here, I was like, how are we gonna account for these people?
In fact, another funny story is when I met with Visit Pittsburgh, and one of the things that we want to do on our 47th floor, but as I mentioned, every floor is an acre in size. We don't need 44,000 square feet to do what we want to do. So we're converting one of the wings of our space into a banquet space for like weddings, bar mitzvahs, corporate events. The NFL has said to Visit Pittsburgh that they need rental spaces, giant rental spaces. And so when I told them that we're going to have this 13,000 square foot space, they were very excited. And I said, who would be renting this space? And they said everything from like an ESPN or whatever, Fox Sports, that could be their home base, just like during the Olympics where you had the guy in front of the fireplace interviewing people.
That'd be one heck of a view.
They need something like that. To a team's fan headquarters. So each team has like an official sort of spot, and their fans sort of take over that spot, and that's their home base. And I was like, that's great. As long as it's not the Ravens, the Bengals, or the Browns, we're fine. And they laughed and then was like, no, you can't. you can't discriminate. And I'm like, that's fine.
Like,
we'll figure it out. So,
come on.
but no, they're very interested in seeing what we have. I can't remember if it was October or November where I know that the NFL comes every month, but the person who's looking at the rental spaces, I don't think she's coming in October. I think she's coming in or it is now October, but November. I think she'll be here in November. Cool. So she'll see it.
So as an entrepreneur who's starting this business in Pittsburgh,
mm-hmm.
do you believe that Pittsburgh is a good place for entrepreneurs to start businesses?
Oh my God, yeah. I think that Pittsburghers are extremely supportive and extremely friendly by nature. So when you say, hey, I'm doing this, everybody's excited for you, right? Like there hasn't been one person that is like, that's great, but I'm not paying any dollars to go to the roof. I'll just go to Mount Washington, right? Everyone like you is like, this is very exciting. This is very positive. And my two projects have been very fun oriented, but I've heard the same thing about different ventures, different, if it's a medical device or if it's a whatever. Pittsburghers are very prideful, right? And it goes so far as to say, like, when I travel a lot, like for fun, and I always ask people, where are they from? If you are from Los Angeles, if I meet somebody from Los Angeles, for example, or Des Moines, Iowa, or whatever, I say, where are you from? Their first response is California or Iowa. And I'm like, oh, where? And then they start to narrow it down. If you meet somebody from Pittsburgh, and it can be all the way from Irwin to, whatever, their response is, I'm from Pittsburgh, not Pennsylvania, like Pittsburgh. So to be able to say, this thing was invented in Pittsburgh, or comes from Pittsburgh, or this actor's from Pittsburgh, or this project's from Pittsburgh, like that is very exciting for them. And I think it's sort of like in our nature, it's in our DNA to be helpful and excited and prideful and just sort of, what can I do to help you get this thing off the ground?
I agree. I always joke with my friends, when I was in college, you'd meet someone and be like, oh, where are you from? They're like, oh, just outside of Philly. They're like, where are you from? I'm like, Pittsburgh, but I guess I'm technically just outside of Pittsburgh. I don't live in the city, but like, I never understood why people were like, you're right. Why don't you just say you're from Philadelphia? It's like, oh, I'm 15 minutes outside of Philly. I'm like, you're from Philly.
You're from Philly, right? No, yeah. Being from Pittsburgh is a different. You saw it with the Raiders game. Mm-hmm. It was terrible Towel Central, and they say Pittsburghers travel well. First of all, we're probably already there, but we do travel. It's very exciting. Yeah,
absolutely. So, Jeremy, before we kind of wrap up the show here,
mm-hmm.
there's always one question that we ask every guest that we interview. And that question is,
mm-hmm.
if you could give one word of advice to a young entrepreneur or someone who wanted to start a business, what would that be?
Don't be afraid to make the phone call. And an old boss of mine, a good friend of mine, always said, you can be an order taker or an order maker. And if you want to be successful in whatever you're doing, you have to be an order maker. Nobody from the building's calling me to say, hey, Jeremy, do you want to go do this project? Nobody from the city is saying, oh, we think Jeremy Goldman from Squirrel Hill is going to be the guy for this. I have to be the one to initiate the phone call. I have to be the one to promote myself and promote my idea, to promote, the project. And if you don't, you just sit there and watch TV all day, right? You have to be able to be a self-starter to make that phone call. I've called so many people and they're like, their response is, you want to do what? And like, it's not a normal phone call for what I want to do, right? Especially with the zip line. You want to what? Fly a zip line over a river? And everybody, once they understand, oh, you're serious, this isn't like a joke. All right, how can I help? What can I do? People want to be helpful. So just be an order maker, not an order taker.
I love that. That's true entrepreneurship, being a go-getter and just getting the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This has been great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.